She could have turned back. One step, and everything would have been different. But pride always moves faster than love. And if you let it lead for too long, it will take you somewhere you can never return from. Love doesn't wait forever. It only waits until the first too late. Sometimes an apology weighs less than pride, but it costs more. And the scariest part, we always think there's still time. And then we suddenly notice it's gone. And with it, the person for whom it was worth taking that step. And maybe right now, while you're watching this video, your chance is slipping away. Just one step, and she would have come back. Just one word, and he would have forgiven. But pride always steps faster than love. And that night she made the most terrible choice. She simply walked forward. One click and you're with us, together until we hit our first 1,000. They had just fought. No, it wasn't even like a fight. It was an explosion of accumulated days, words, hints, glances, and silences. He stood in the middle of the room, trying to explain something. She was already putting on her coat. "Can you at least listen?" he said. "I've been listening. For years." Her voice trembled, but only she knew it was from anger, not pain. The door slammed too loudly. The neighbors probably jumped, but she didn't care. Each step down the stairs sounded like a declaration. "I'm right. I'm leaving. I won't give in." She walked fast. Too fast for someone who had just lost everything. Phone in her hands. Not a single tear in her eyes. Because tears are about weakness. And weakness, she hated it. Outside it was cold. The wind hit her face as if trying to sober her up. His last words still rang in her ears. "I love you. But you won't even try to understand." She squeezed her eyes shut. Understand? After everything he said? After he made it seem like it was all my fault? Number, she wasn't going back. Pride is a strange thing. It can warm you from the inside until it cools down, and then only emptiness remains. She walked, clutching her phone in her pocket. Every few seconds it vibrated. Messages, calls. She didn't even look, just clenched her fingers tighter. At the crosswalk, she stopped, and for the first time during the entire walk, she felt silence. Not the kind around her, but the kind inside. She knew that if she just turned back, everything could still be fixed, while he was home, while the warmth of his voice hadn't yet dissolved into the air, while that moment hadn't come when even sorry no longer makes sense. One turn, one step, and everything could have been different. She almost took it. Her foot turned toward home. Her heart jerked. But then, she remembered how he said that evening. "You always think only about yourself." How he didn't notice her tears when he said it. How he turned away, not seeing how something cracked inside her. And pride took her hand again. "You're not me first," she whispered to herself. She walked on. With each step, the phone rang less often, then fell silent. And with it, what could still have been saved fell silent too. People think love dies from betrayal, but more often, from silence. From the fact that no one dared to be the first to say, "I was wrong." A couple of blocks later, she felt an emptiness she had never known before. Not the kind that comes after a breakup, but the kind that appears when you know you had a chance and you let it go. She stopped, looked back. The road home was so short, her pride, and so tall. She took a deep breath and walked forward again. She almost turned back, but pride walked faster. The phone had been silent for 2 days now, not because he forgot, but because pride knows how to wait. On the first evening, she came home late, threw her coat on a chair, turned on the light, and suddenly realized the apartment was too quiet. Before, the silence had seemed cozy to her. Now, empty. She approached her phone, opened the chat. 3 unread messages, 1 missed call, all from him. Let's talk. I don't want it to end like this. Please. She read these words over and over. Her fingers trembled, but not from the desire to answer, but from the desire not to give in. She closed the phone. Let him feel what it's like to wait. Pride rarely thinks about reconciliation. Pride thinks about revenge. The next day he didn't write, didn't call, didn't try to meet. At first she felt relief, like, well, finally he also understood that we need to give it time. But by evening another feeling stirred inside. What if he just gave up? She remembered their conversations, how he once said, I don't like to stay silent after a fight. For me, silence is worse than any screaming. And now she knew. He wasn't silent out of principle. He was silent because something inside him had grown tired of knocking on her closed door. In the evening, she went to his social media profile. Nothing new. No photos, no stories, no hint that he was living on. And this made it even worse. Because silence without an answer isn't a pause. It's emptiness. On the 3rd day, she had a dream. They were together again, drinking coffee at their favorite cafe. He was telling her about his new idea. She was laughing. The dream was so real that when she woke up, she reached for her phone, but her fingers stopped a millimeter from the call button. She felt that if she wrote first, she would admit defeat, and she didn't know how to lose. That evening, she heard the familiar sound of messages. Her heart jumped, but it wasn't him. A friend. Where have you disappeared to? Is everything okay? She wrote, yes, just busy, and closed the chat. On the 4th day, she caught herself waiting, though she swore she wasn't waiting. She pretended to live her life, went to work, met with colleagues, scrolled through her feed, but every time the phone vibrated, her heart pounded in her temples. In the evening, she came home and realized, today, he definitely wouldn't write anymore. She put the kettle on, sat at the table, took her phone, opened the chat, looked at his avatar, and for the first time in these days, the thought flashed through her head. What if this is already the end? Pride doesn't warn when the point of no return arrives. It just crosses it and moves on. She remembered how on the 1st day her pride walked ahead, held her hand, pushed her. Don't you dare go back first. And now the same pride sat next to her, but was silent. Because pride has no plan for when love starts to disappear. She typed 1 word, hi, and didn't send it. Deleted it. Wrote again, let's meet. Deleted it. Left the screen empty. Put the phone face down. Let him make the move. That night she barely slept. Listened to the rain beating against the windowsill. Imagined that he wasn't sleeping either. That he was also looking at his phone. That any moment now. But morning came, and there were no messages from him. She wanted him to come back, but pride still sat next to her and whispered, not you first, never. On the 5th day in the morning, she opened his chat again. 0 new messages, 0 calls. She stared at the screen as if she could make it light up with the force of her gaze, but the screen remained dark. Love can be killed with 1 word, but even faster, with complete silence. She decided to check his social media. New photos had appeared there, not happy ones, not with someone, just him. At a table in a cafe, a cup of coffee, a book. Caption, without the unnecessary. It was like a blow. She knew. He never posted such photos. This wasn't content. This was a signal that he was living, without her. In the evening, she walked down the street. Rain fell in fine dust. She remembered their conversations, their night walks, their silly jokes, and in every memory he was next to her. And now next to her, only empty space. The phone in her pocket felt heavy. She took it out every couple of minutes. No messages. Even in group chats, he was silent. She suddenly realized silence had stopped being his attempt to punish. This had become his new life. On the 6th day, she woke up feeling like there was no air in the room. She opened the window, breathed in the cold, but it didn't help. It wasn't oxygen. It was him, his voice, his laughter, his habit of whispering, "sleep," before falling asleep. And all of this had disappeared. She took her phone again, opened the chat, typed, "I miss you," and didn't send it, because Pride was still sitting next to her. In the evening, she heard his laughter in the crowd, turned around. No, it wasn't him, but her heart was pounding as if she had just seen him. And in that moment, she understood. If he comes back, it will be a miracle. And miracles don't happen to those who wait, but don't go. On the 7th day, she imagined his life without her for the first time, not in resentment, not in pain, but in silence, in which he no longer waited for her footsteps. This was scarier than any fights, scarier than him leaving for another woman, because it meant he chose to live not with her, but without her. She stood on the balcony and looked at the city. Below, people were hurrying, taxis were honking, rain was drumming on rooftops. Everything was as always. Only inside her, everything had stopped being as always. She thought she was controlling the situation, but it turned out she was just watching love leave without noise. And this time Pride wasn't leading her by the hand. It just stood aside and watched as he stopped waiting. The 8th day was quieter than all the previous ones. Even the rain outside the window seemed too polite to disturb this silence. She woke up earlier than usual, sat on the bed, hugged her knees. Inside was emptiness, but not the kind that asks for warmth, but the kind that had already gotten used to the cold. The phone lay on the nightstand. She looked at it and understood. One more day, and his silence would become final. She opened the chat, wrote, "Can we talk?" Put a period, stared at this phrase for a long time, and for the first time in all these days, pressed send. The answer came in half an hour. "I can't right now, I'll write later." This later sounded like a sentence, because she knew, before he would have dropped everything for her. And now, he didn't drop it. All day she waited, checked every notification instantly, but later never came. In the evening, she put on her coat, went outside. The cold burned her face, but she walked fast, almost running. It didn't matter that he didn't write. It didn't matter that it was already dark. She decided she would go to him. Sometimes we understand the price of love only when we're ready to scream it at a closed door. The road to his house seemed longer than usual. Her heart was beating in her throat. She was already rehearsing the words, "I was wrong, I'm sorry. I want to fix everything." When she reached his building, her hands were shaking so much she could barely enter the code. She went up to his floor, stood in front of the door, pressed her forehead against the cold metal, and then she heard it. Laughter. A woman's voice. His voice. She froze, not because she was jealous, but because she understood there was already life without her there. And this life sounded peaceful. In that moment, her pride suddenly disappeared. But with it, the reason she could have stayed also disappeared. She took a step back, then another, and slowly walked to the stairs. Outside, the wind was sharp. She walked along the same streets she had once walked away from him the first time. Only now, it wasn't pride leading her by the hand anymore, but emptiness. She almost turned back. But now, there was nowhere to turn back to. She came home late, took off her coat, left her bag by the door. The apartment was dark and quiet, like a closed book. She went to the kitchen, poured water, sat at the table, put her phone in front of her, stared into the black screen as if into a mirror. She wanted to write more, wanted to call, but there was simply no point in it. Everything that could be said needed to be said then, and now words were like letters sent to an empty address. The night passed in half sleep. She saw him in her dream, but no longer beside her. He stood far away, looked calmly, and didn't come to her. In the morning, she woke up from silence, not from a call, not from a message, from silence. She was pouring coffee and suddenly remembered. On that day when she left, she needed to take just one step back, just turn around, just say, "I was wrong." It would have been painful, shameful, but alive. Instead, she chose to walk forward. And forward wasn't leading her to life. She was led by pride. She looked out the window. People were going about their business. Someone was hurrying, someone was talking on the phone, someone was laughing, and only her steps led nowhere. Pride isn't armor, it's a cage, and the longer you sit in it, the fewer doors remain open.